This is Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium.
Today's guest is Gary Shea from Alcatrazz. Alcatrazz formed in 1983 in Los Angeles and has been as well known for the legendary players and singers who have passed throughout the band's ranks as much as they have for their music. Formed originally by the trio Jimmy Waldo, Gary Shea, both fresh from the late 1970s hitmakers New England, and the short-lived band Warrior, featuring a pre-Kiss Vinnie Vincent along with vocalist Graham Bonnet, himself with impressive credentials, having been a then-recent member of Rainbow and the Michael Schenker Group. The band set about completing the lineup with the drummer Jan Uvena, formerly of Alice Cooper, and then a very young Yngwie Malmsteen, a guitarist who quickly made a name for himself upon arriving in the USA in the early 1980s. Bassist Gary Shea, who named the band and designed the band's logos, no less, came up with the iconic album titles. Let's also not forget Live Sentence, has been flying Alcatrazz flag with Jimmy for over 4 decades now and is looking forward to his next phase. Gary recently published a book, No Bass, No Party, and it's an essential read for all those who want to dive deep into the Alcatrazz story. It's a pleasure to have you on, Gary.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Let me tell you, when I was reading the bio, I said, well, I have to read this book. And I went into Audible and I downloaded it. And within 3 days, I had completed it. Start, stop, go back. And it is wonderful. It actually starts out when you're very young, and it talks about how you are, within your family, where you were living and all of that. But the best part of it is really that it's read by someone named Uncle Perry. And at the end of it, I was like, oh, this is wonderful. And then I was like, the first question I'm going to ask him is, who's Uncle Perry?
Well, he's a voiceover guy that the publishing company hired. I had nothing to do with it.
Oh, wow. It gives this feeling that he's a family member. And the way his voice is, it sounds very familiar. So,
right.
Wow.
He's from North Carolina.
Oh, it's a great pick. Let me tell you, it was really a very nice lineup there. I have to say that I was really taken away with the Audible presentation of it. I listen to a lot of books because I travel a lot. And listening to your book, having recently spoke with Jimmy and having some experience remembering Alcatrazz, because I am an 80s girl, I really was astonished with some of the stories, and I was just blown away. I was like, wow, this is the behind-the-scenes look. So I can't wait to hear more about it.
Yeah, everyone kept saying, you should write a book. You've got all these great stories, and I kept saying, it's a timing thing. And I was approached by Books We Love Publishing in Calgary, Canada. Would I want to be part of a series of musicians talking about the music business? Not so much the parties and getting arrested and all that fun stuff that we've also done, but the music business, because a lot of young people that are starting out now that are on TikTok and YouTube and everything, trying to be famous, they're unaware of the business part of the publishing, who owns what, and all the mess you can get yourself into when you start signing contracts. We went through that whole thing. As I showed in my book, I got sued for $1 million at one point in federal court in New York City. That was fun. And so I wanted to talk about that with a whole generation of younger kids. And the older people with their in bands would sympathize with that, and they would understand. They probably went through the same thing. So it was about the music business and not so much the partying things or my family life per se.
It is very true, though. You do have some stories about family life wrapped in there. And when you just kind of mentioned about getting arrested, it really jogged my mind because you tell a really cute story in the beginning. I mean, you guys are young. I don't know, someone's father had like a police car and it's like an unmarked police car and you're like, oh, it's wintertime and we need to like drop someone home, So I thought that was hilarious because I remember being a young teen myself taking my dad's car like, oh, well, I'll just forget to tell him I took the car.
Yes, exactly. It was the very first day of my very first band, and it was New Year's Day. It was winter. It was cold out in Connecticut. And my friend and I had no way of getting back with our guitars and amplifiers. And our friend whose home we were in, his father was a detective for the Connecticut State Police, and they were away because it was New Year's Day. And we decided to take the brand new Connecticut State Police detective car a couple of towns away and give us a ride home, which we did. And I just thought, I want to keep doing this. This is kind of fun.
Yes, it's so interesting because at one point in that story, you say you're passing like another police car and you actually like kind of shrink down in your seats a little bit. And the driver actually like waves, throws up a wave. And I'm like, wow, I was sweating. Listen to it. I was like, oh no, I was like worried for you.
Yeah, that sold me. I said, I'm into the adventure, this whole thing. I want to do this. So.
It's very interesting because I really appreciate listening to what you were just saying about new musicians and younger musicians and how people are kind of taking things on. TikTok does have a big influence, but you talked about something in your book, which I was very, very aware of. I have a very good friend in the music business who did exactly what you did. You realized that you were a left-hand player. And someone said, well, I advise you to be a right-hand player. And just like my friend, you just said, okay, I'll do it. There was no hang up about it until this day. And the guy has been playing. I mean, he's got probably over 50 albums, but he's been playing. And he very often says that was the best decision he made because it does come up a lot of times they'll tell them get on the stage and it's not always going to be your guitar or things get missing in the airports or whatever and you have to borrow a guitar and there's so many things. But he also talked about his style of playing. And I think that's also what you kind of touched on in the book, that you felt that the strength of your left hand, especially when you went from guitar to bass, that you felt the strength in your left hand far exceeded your right. And that was the hand that you needed to kind of put the pressure on the strings. And as a non-guitarist, I was like, oh, I could totally follow that. So that really made a lot of sense. And I remember you saying that you felt that that was one person that had given you advice you were glad you took. And that seems like almost a theme in your life where either through a conversation or other members of the band, things are suggested or things are discussed and it comes across as conversation, but it ends up being advice that either you're giving someone or that you're taking yourself. So do you think that that's been kind of a theme in your career or in your lifetime that you can reflect on?
Yeah, I think my life has been a series of networking and connections. Being young, I sought out the best guitar player in town to take lessons from. He suggested we started a band. He and I went to Madison Square Garden together 10 years later. And over the years, it's always kind of been seeking out people like that, looking for situations I would fit into musically and working with that. The same with when things don't go right and you kind of dust yourself off and go back at it again. And again, networking. Way back in the days when you cared to carry a telephone book around, it was 3 inches thick of people. It was difficult. You had to have your friend's parents' phone number because they don't move around so much. And if your friends are traveling, you'd have their parents' number, which I mentioned in the book. A friend of mine joined the Dire Straits. I didn't know that until I called his mother. And sure enough, he joined the Dire Straits. And I was trying to get him into my bands and to get him into Alcatrazz in Los Angeles. And again, I had the parents' phone number. So it's all networking and meeting people and learning from people and taking advice and giving advice and kind of just keeping your ear to the road. Try and make the best decision. And again, haven't done everything perfectly, but I'm pretty happy at the age I am now that got through a lot of that. And I had a great time, and I'm very, very fortunate for that.
Yes. I was thinking when I was listening to this story, because I had spoken with Jimmy, you had become friends with the members of KISS. One of the stories that you kind of talk about, you just decide to go shopping with Paul Stanley. You wander into the store, it's a clothing store, and he falls in love with this kind of silky satiny kind of top. And he says, I'll take 4 of them in 4 different colors. And you said that wasn't the piece that surprised you. The surprise was that he agreed to pay extra because he didn't want to carry the bags, they were going to ship them over to his place. And I thought, oh, wow, and it's written so well, your book, because I have never met Paul Stanley, but I'm a big fan of him. And I could just see the two of you walking through the store and him having this whole conversation,
Right.
It's interesting, too, because your connection with Kiss came through your manager, also came through having the connection with Vinnie Vincent. So I know a lot of our listeners are very big Kiss fans. What was your experience around that time? Because Kiss was huge. So what was it like being connected to them or even going shopping? I mean, I'm sure it had to be an extraordinary experience. They've been famous for a very long time.
Yeah. I first saw the band when they opened their third act on the bill. They played the Orpheum Theater in Boston. I think Blue Oyster Cult was the headliner. And their third act on the bill. And I thought, that's strange. But I thought the drummer did a great drum solo. And then fast forward about 5 years maybe, and we had not yet become New England, but we've been recording for close to 2 years in Philadelphia, living in Boston and going down to a friend's studio in Philadelphia to make 16-track tapes, which was a really great deal back in the late 70s. And a friend of mine gave our tape to a fellow who was a promo guy for Electric Records in the Northeast. And he knew the guys in Queen, and we had sent a tape to Brian May about producing us. And he said he'd like to do it if he had time, but of course, when the time came, he didn't have time. But he actually drove across London with our demo and put it in the mailbox of Mike Stone, who was one of their engineers, worked on Bohemian Rhapsody and everything. So in the meantime, we had given this person from Electric Records our tape. He went to a Kiss show in Providence, Rhode Island, and played a tape for a friend of his who was also a prior Electric Records promo guy who was now working for Bill O'Coin, for Kiss's manager. And he said, "Who are these guys?" And he's this great band living in the woods, and they're amazing. And he said, "Well, can I do this live?" And he said, "Live, even heavier live. They're unbelievable." And so they said, "Well, do you mind having the guys come over tomorrow morning and play for them?" We said, "Sure, come on down." And they did. And Rick Alberti came to see us. And he went back to New York City. And within a week's time, Bill O'Coin himself flew up to Massachusetts to our little place in the woods, a couple of limousines full of suits, and sat down and we played for him. And he said, "I want to be your manager. Why don't you guys come down to New York and see what we got?" It was like 2 floors in Madison Avenue, Their offices were bigger than most record companies. They had an easy 40, 50 people working for them, all high-end lawyers and international this, international that. It was quite the beehive of activity. To be part of that was pretty amazing. So we were taken on by O'Coin Management to manage our band, and we had a really good start with that. And so in the interim of looking for producers, it was suggested, since I was in New York working on some Kiss projects, would we be okay with maybe Paul Stanley being our producer and Michael being the engineer? And we thought about it for a second, and we had all the big names in the book we want to try and approach, like Gus Dudgeon, who was Elton John's guy, and this guy and that guy, and guys in Queen. And we thought about it. And, Paul, even though he never produced a record before, had tons of experience. He'd done, I don't know, a dozen Kiss records probably. Not his first time in a recording studio. For us at the time, the producer's job was that of a coach. We had produced ourselves, written all the music, and reworked it, retooled it, reworked it, retooled it. All we had to do was go to LA, New York, and London, re-record it in 24-track. That was our aim. So Paul became our coach, could sit in the control room and say, "That was good, but one more time," and then make a decision saying, "That's great, on to the next song, on to the next piece." Saved a lot of time. And that's when we'd go out for lunch and stuff. And that was when he had not yet been unmasked. So he was walking around with a handkerchief over his nose half the time and big sunglasses and, this big black hairdo. And we'd walk around Beverly Hills or someplace and go to lunch and go shopping. And we had a great time. And then it came time for us to do our record. And we were given the Kiss Dynasty Tour the summer of '79. That was a big deal. Every band in the world was trying to get on there. AC/DC and pick a band that wanted to be on that tour. We got it. So that was the power of having Bill O'Coin be our manager at that time in our lives. It was pretty cool.
So how did Vinnie Vincent get involved in all of this?
So we had 6 record company presidents come see us in Massachusetts. And we chose Infinity Records. We had some problems with the label going underwater in the middle of our second record. We switched to Electra on our second and third. And at the end of our third record, our guitar player, John, decided he was going to quit the band. And he quit for different reasons, personal things, whatever. We need to find somebody. So we put the word out to all the guitar companies and all the people who knew hotshot guitar players. Need a guy that could sing great, play great guitar, and be a writer as well. And Gene Simmons rang us up and he said, we got a guy out here in LA that we're working with. It's a great guitar player, great songwriter, sings and all that. And he's too short to be in Kiss. You can have him. So Vinnie Casano from New Haven, Connecticut, only 40 miles from where I grew up in Southington, Connecticut, came to see us. He flew from LA, learned our New England music, and he played it very well. In the meantime, we had taken his demo tape, which we thought was like heavy Foreigner. It was pretty good music, like the song Lick It Up and some of those Kiss songs around there. And we thought, this is right to the bank. This is cool music. And we learned his stuff. So after he got done auditioning for us, we played his stuff and blew his mind. He couldn't believe we knew his songs. He said he couldn't find anybody like us in LA. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So we decided to sleep on it. The next day, we decided to scrap the whole New England thing we've been working on for 5-6 years of our lives and just move on and start a whole new band in Los Angeles. The four of us, Gersh Gardner, the drummer, Jimmy, the keyboard player, myself, and Vinnie. And we went to Los Angeles and started rehearsing. Like a few days later, one airplane ride, rehearsing. And that went along great for about 6 weeks. And that's the point where the guys in Kiss decided Vinnie could be the guy in their band. And he became Vinnie Vincent. And they offered him, of course, a great deal to join their band. And his wife just had babies just as we got to LA. I mean, they're literally 3 weeks old. We couldn't even go to the house. They were so young. So do you want to come with us and be famous, or do you want to hope your new band does something? So there's that. So he went off with Kiss, and Jim and I stayed in LA. Make a long story short, we eventually hooked up, started Alcatrazz about maybe 6 months after that. Big mess.
Well, that's interesting because he had mentioned that to me as well. The piece of it is the naming of it, Alcatrazz. And I think that came from you, right? The whole piece of it kind of came from you with the idea of actually Alcatrazz. And that's where a lot of the songs and a lot of the concepts kind of are formed around that. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were sitting around arguing, almost finishing our first album. And Yngwie kind of wanted Dungeons and Dragons with the dungeon names and the Black Forest, whatever you want to call it. I said, no. And I said, we're just talking, the 5 of us and our manager. And I said, when we were in New England, we were always buried in the record section between Olivia Newton-John and New Riders of the Purple Sage. And nobody goes to the N section, the O section, the P section. They might go to Z, say Frank Zappa, but basically they stay, A, D, A, B, C, D, E. Be cool to have a name, I said, like ABBA, or Aerosmith, or AC/DC, something with A, like Alcatrazz. And just came out of my mouth. And everybody jumped up, so that was brilliant. I have to agree with them, I guess. That was the thing. And right away, it was No Parole from Rock and Roll, Disturbing the Peace, our new records, Prior Convictions. And it just fit into that whole thing really well. We decided to add an extra Z to it to keep away from the state of California selling T-shirts for Alcatraz prison and not infringing on any of their trademark copyright things. And we also let the extra Z look kind of cool, like jazz, pizzazz. And we were big fans of Todd Rundgren's group Nas. We decided, let's go for that. That was pretty cool. And the same thing with New England. There's another thing about that Rolling Stone said we were just morons and cretins and called us all kinds of bad names for having the name New England after the group Boston did so well. And the name came up from some of the people in Elektra Records. And at first we thought, that's just crazy. And then I thought about, I'm from Connecticut, John's from Boston. The guys in the cars are from Ohio. Tom Schultz is from Ohio. They're not Bostonians. And the name New England sounded more like our style of music, like 10cc, Moody Blues, bands that we liked, English bands. So it's kind of a new version of our interpretation of being Americans of some of those English bands. And we decided if any band right now in this part of the world that can take this name and get away with it, we're up for the challenge. So let's do it. And it'll make people crazy, and we will prevail. And we went right to the top 40 with it, so that's good.
Yes, and I think also, Gene Simmons also put a stamp of approval that he thought it was a really
Yeah,
cool name too. So I
yeah,
think
yeah.
he weighed in as well.
Yeah, supposedly the day that Rick got the tape at that gig in Providence, that he told Gene he was going up to Massachusetts, just 40 miles away, to see us. And Gene said, Alcatrazz. I like that name. So we got Gene's blessings before we even met him. So that was all good.
That is great. I know that some of the members of the band have kind of switched around. And I think through listening to the book, I also learned a little bit about finding Steve Vai as a replacement. And that I think was through you. Is that correct?
Well, actually, it's Jimmy. Jimmy knew David Rosenthal, who plays for Billy Joel now. He was in Rainbow at one point, and he's a Berkeley guy in Boston. He knew Steve Vai, and he told Jimmy, "You should get Steve Vai. We're friends. He's a great guitar player. He's been with Frank Zappa for the last 7 albums. He's just a wunderkind, genius level guitar player, writing all of Frank Zappa's scores when he was 18 years old. They paid him for 4 years of college to write the scores. When Frank learned he was only 18, he said, call me when you're 21, you can join the band. But in the meantime, I'm going to give you homework and I'll pay you to write all our manuscripts and stuff. And he did, and did pretty well for himself. And he had just released a solo record, a song called The Attitude Song. And Guitar Player magazine at that point released the first floppy disk. Remember those? So the first floppy disk, the Guitar Player magazine is going to put out. And they said right in the article, who do we get? Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, Stevie Ray Vaughan. We're going to get Steve Vai from Alcatrazz. And we thought, there's a big feather in our cap. That's pretty cool. So that's how the Steve connection came along.
That is cool. I know. So that must have been a big transition between Yngwie and Yngwie's style and then Steve Vai and Steve's style.
Right.
So
they're both different styles. They're both really good at what they do. And it was great to be able to play right along with both of them. And I learned a few new tricks, played a lot of music and learned things. And it was a great time to be playing music. But we had done so many things in New England musically. It was just another step up to ingest even more music, more classical type stuff, and more with Steve's more about time changes and missing beats and dropping notes, being clever. So I was real proud of all that music, and we still are. We're still playing those songs 50 years later, something like that.
yes, and it lives on. I was looking at YouTube, and all of this is all documented. And the world of the 80s was very big with MTV and making videos. And some
Right.
of your videos were like very, very much like storytelling videos. And, you go back now and you're like, wow, it's amazing because they really try to match up what was going on in the song. I think you have one with like the devil and then and the angel, and you have a little bit of that.
That's God Bless Video. Graham wrote this song. MTV was brand new. And it was great to hear 24 hours of bands, one after the other, no ads, just band after band. All these great English bands like ABC and Duran Duran, Boy George, Pretenders, everybody, and us and people around MTV. And Graham was kind of poking fun at some of the bands not being so great. They look cool, but they didn't really sing that good. So he was saying that God must have blessed video to let this happen. And that's what the song is about. Take some of the English accent, give him some cool clothes, and put him on MTV, make him a star. And so the video was the devil and God's angel talking together, which was Fraser Smith, who at the time was the big DJ for KLOS in Los Angeles. So he's playing the devil and the angel, and they're making a bet about what the band's going to do. And we did that. And I get even a better story. Probably 10 years later, one of my sons was 4th grade. And it was time to do the homework. And I go in this room, going to read the right act, and the music's blasting. And I say, turn that off. Time for homework. And I realized it's one of our songs. And I'm going, whoa, whoa, whoa. What radio station? He goes, it's not the radio, Dad. It's the computer. Oh, because it was like DOS was still happening on the computer at that point. What do I know about computers whenever it was, way early 90s. And it turns out that it wasn't a radio station. It was Grand Theft Auto. We're on the soundtrack for Grand Theft Auto. The next day, all my son's little friends came in. I was the guy to fix the bicycles for them and all that kind of mechanical thing. The next day, it was all holla, holla, holla. Because I was connected to their computer thing. They didn't realize that. So that was pretty funny. Well, my son now is 37, he said just a few months ago, he was out with his buddies, and what's your dad do? And I said, well, Dad plays an Alcatrazz. He goes, what? Your father plays an heavy? He's, how old is he? And my son told him how old I am. And he goes, damn. So we haven't changed, just got older, but we haven't changed our attitude. And it's always rewarding to hear people say that we affected their lives, that they were in high school or something, or having a bad day or a good day, heard our music and were taken with it and bought the record and loved it ever since. And you get to meet them. That's really a cool thing. So
Yes, yeah. It's interesting because you had mentioned briefly, just a little bit in your book about Todd Rundgren. So you just mentioned him again. What was your real connection? Were you guys really good friends, or was it more of a crossover in music?
well, all of us in New England were big fans of the group Nas, which was a Philadelphia band in 1968. They did a couple of records and broke up. Then Todd became Todd, solo guy. And we were at the third album looking for a producer. And again, the first record was with Paul Stanley and Mike Stone. The second record was the band and Mike Stone. Paul's off doing something else. And the third one, we thought, what be kind of cool to work with somebody who, there's two kinds of producers. There's a producer that can just hear things and make a suggestion, like Clive Davis from Columbia Records. He can say to Michael Bolton, just change this one thing and write, so just change this verse and do that. And they do it, and it's brilliant. And there's the other kind of producer who was a musician, like George Martin, can write string parts and cello parts and has all kinds of musical things to do. So we were going through producers, and the name Todd Rundgren popped up. I said, that'd be kind of cool. We love Todd. Todd's cool. Todd the Mod. And he said yes. So we got to go to his house up in Woodstock, but not just a studio, went to his house. A-frame house in his property, the studio downstairs, and the loft upstairs was the control room. It was where Utopia made all the records. He was doing us, Utopia, and the Psychedelic Furs all at the same time. So that was pretty cool. And we made a record in less than 3 weeks. The whole record was written the week before, and we recorded it in 3 weeks. It was mastered and sent to LA to Elektra. And we're pretty proud of that too. We were moving fast. We've been together for, like you're saying, like 5-6 years now. Myself and Jimmy and Hirsch and me and the drummer really locking in and knowing exactly what to do. Someone says, use these chords, and you know what to do. That was kind of a drag to lose that when the band broke up. But since then, we've been reunited and made some new music over the years. We've played a number of shows around the country in the last 15 years. I think we've done about 15, 20 New England shows, as well as playing with Alcatrazz. And that's cool. It's one point where we're in Tokyo with Alcatrazz, and then 4 months later, we were in Tokyo, Jim and I, with New England. Two different styles of music completely. That was cool. And speaking of COVID, there was a classic rock festival in Belgium and Liège that we were going to go to, and New England was going to be playing there, and also Alcatrazz was going to play there. So they had it set up that New England would play first one night, and Alcatrazz would follow that. So Jim would stay on stage twice and get paid twice. We thought that was kind of cool. But then COVID came, that never happened. So there's all those great stories that don't happen. The great plans of mice and men, that whole quote that, no matter how much you plan for something and work at it, it can all go south. It's like 52 cards in a card deck. And one goes out, the whole thing goes down. Somebody gets sick, the truck breaks down, the gear gets stolen. A zillion things can go way wrong in a rock band. And that's why I said, if you want to do something crazy, go ahead, join a rock band. It's like the circus on steroids.
Wow. It's interesting because in your book, I do remember you mentioning March of 2020. You very distinctly say that was like the beginning of COVID. So I think you really do kind of bring the reader back to that was really early on, because you had a lot of plans, but the whole world stopped. So it didn't matter what anyone had planned. It was like March 2020. That's when it was really starting. And I think you had mentioned you either had flown somewhere and you were trying to get back, or there was something about some kind of a plane thing there. And I was like, I have to remember that.
There were a bunch of them. The first one we did, the artwork, the photography for the first album, COVID had just started. Joe was in Boston, Jimmy's in Chicago, and I'm in Florida. We flew to LA to do just a photo session, to be in the same picture together, not Photoshop it. And I was on an airplane from Atlanta, a regular size airliner that was a couple hundred people, with maybe 18 people in the whole airplane. And I thought, if I don't die now, I'm never going to die. I don't catch this bug and die now. And the other time we did our UK tour just after that, and we're getting to leave. And they were changing the rules of getting the vaccinations and to be able to come back into the States. And it was a touch and go thing. We had taken the test. We had a 2-day thing, and they were going to change it down to 24 hours. Have to go retake the test, miss our airplane flights back to the States. Going, no. But we made it, so that's part of being on the road and all the things that go on in the background. That when you actually see the band play, it's pretty special. They got there, with the truck got there, the gear got there, they're on the stage, they're playing. So it's a pretty amazing thing that all goes well.
You had mentioned something earlier that I thought, geez, I have to come back to that. You traveled a lot and you toured a lot early on, and now you're kind of over the last few years still traveling and still touring and still playing. Do you see the difference between the then and now with the audiences? Like playing in, Tokyo or something, in the 1980s versus now. Are the venues any different? I mean, not COVID related at all, but are the venues becoming bigger? Is it easier? Technology has changed. You have the backup of the computers now.
It's kind of changed in that the audience now has, since the 90s, I don't know how many thousands of new bands there are that have been really successful. Bands like Tool, say, that have come and gone. Like I told Jimmy, these bands have come and gone multi-platinum, and they don't even exist anymore. And we're still playing together. We're still hanging out and doing this and trying to make our way. So the audience is more divided now there's so many more options of bands. Where, like, say, at Woodstock, there was 30 bands, now there's 3,000 bands. And you're competing with 3,000 bands, if not 30,000 bands in the world at the moment for that top 10 thing, that top 5 thing. It's a stiff competition. So a lot of our audience are older crowd who were with us in the 80s, and they're getting older. And people that age really don't go to rock concerts anymore. So that eats into the audience thing. And the younger people hear about it and go, that's pretty cool. So it's trying to keep it going. So like any group, like ourselves, is in the classic rock category. They've been out there since the 70s and 80s. The audience keeps changing around, whether you're in Styx or Cheap Trick, whatever. The audiences keep changing. I guess up to the band to be relevant and just be entertaining, have people come back and, enjoy your music.
Well, the true blue fans don't go away. Just last night I was in the Paramount in Brooklyn. Bruce Dickinson was there, and I could tell you every guy had a jacket on with patches on, and they had their Maiden going on, and it was really like a Maiden reunion. I was like, what is going on? It was really very interesting to see that. Yeah.
Right,
but Bruce was exactly the way he used to be. You know what I mean? It was just like you got the full experience. He really was hitting it. And I think that's what the fans really appreciate. They go for what their expectation is met when they leave. And I think that's really key to their memories, and that's really amazing. It is different now. And you brought up a good point earlier about how we used to listen to music. When you talked about trying to name Alcatrazz with the A, I remember going to Terror Records or Sam Goody's and kind of like going through the alphabet of where these albums were. Now you're streaming them. Quite literally. There's Apple Music, there's Spotify, there's Tidal, there's so many out there.
Yeah. And when we were younger, listening to vinyl in the 60s and the 70s, even the 80s, you played the record millions of times. I remember a time in Boston, all the universities like BU or someplace, Carole King's Tapestry was playing 300 dorms simultaneously, 24 hours a day, over and over and over again, And the kids today don't listen to albums. They're not really supportive of bands. It's more like the old days in the 60s where people had singles. So you had that one song is your thing. So they don't really listen to the whole album. It seems like albums are almost a waste of time because they're just dealing with the one song, the one hit song. Whereas if you had a record like the first King Crimson album, that was a milestone type record, or any Beatle record in the Stones back then, Moody Blues, and people just would sit back and listen to those records for days and weeks and months, and of course get a buzz on when they did it. But that was different, and now it's different. That it's like back in the 60s when people just had solo records. It was Gene Pitney and Frankie Avalon. They had just singles, and trying to get around that. So how do you breach that? people don't listen to the record, but they do like, once they do hear the record, they like it. It's just a different mindset. People now are faster paced. There's so much information coming at us from cell phones and TV. No one's got time to sit down and actually read a book or actually listen to a whole album and enjoy it and block out everything, block out the texting and the nonsense that's out there now, and enjoy music. So I think that people, in a way, enjoyed music more in a way because of that reason than they are now. Or the people are in the concert and they're filming the whole thing with their cell phone. Sit down and listen to the music. Somebody else is going to make a video of it. Why do you have to put it on your phone the whole show? So they're all staying the whole time. They're not listening. They're playing with their phone and getting it all right. It's like sit down and listen to the music. It's kind of insulting in a way.
Well, it's interesting because I wanted to know a little bit, how did you balance your life? Because some people go through music and being a musician and never really creating a family. How did you balance that into your life?
It just kind of happened. Everything I've done has kind of just happened. During the third Alcatrazz record, my daughter was born, and I have 3 children, all born right, pretty close together in the late 80s. And that changed a lot of things, staying home in LA, and we decided to move to Michigan. So that changed my whole thing I was been working at Warner Brothers. So I was a Warner Brothers career for a while, hanging out with Clint Eastwood and Mel Gibson and Barbra Streisand, all these people in their homes, bringing film and documents to people in Bel Air and whatever from the studios and the Disney studios and Technicolor and all that stuff running around. And I had a great insurance thing for my kids at the time, which I needed. So I've had a chance of doing some of the stuff and still playing in a band. I was still playing in 2 other bands at that time after Alcatrazz and doing that and trying to raise 3 babies. And now they're all grown up and I'm still still doing the same thing, making albums and taking. I just came out from spending a few weeks in Michigan to see my kids. I'm lucky that I never want to be the kind of dad that was never home, the traveling salesman thing. And you miss all the grammar school silly things, all the little concerts and the Christmas plays and all the stuff that's important to little kids. And your dad's not there. And then that leads to more trouble on the road too. Dad's somebody else having a good time, or mom's having a good time with somebody else. It's not good for marriage. So I was lucky to be able to do both, to have a home life and raise my kids and still keep my finger in the music world. So I didn't write about it in my book too much, but it's in the thread of the whole thing. You have to be able to support yourself and do other things sometimes, because it's not that easy to make it in the music business. That's a constant full-time income over a course of time. Some people are really good at it. I've been lucky, and other times not so lucky. So you have to punt.
Yes.
Jimmy and I were driving taxi cabs when we put New England together. And we're cab drivers in Boston at nighttime, driving all the drunk Boston University guys home at night.
Oh, wow. Well, that was dangerous in itself.
In the snow, it was pretty crazy. We did that, got to do what you got to do.
Absolutely. Did any of your children become musical after your influence?
Not really. One of my sons kind of noodles around, not really wanting to be in a band or anything like that. He plays pretty good guitar and bass and played drums for a while. But he's into other things, and it's not a thing for him to be a musician and carry on. I have a grandson that's 21 years old. He plays trumpet, but again, not to be in a band, So it's kind of different. I'll tell you a quick story of my grandson. He was probably in the 3rd grade or so, and they brought the kids to the School of Rock to see if the school kids wanted to take lessons. So my daughter went along with the moms in the afternoon to the School of Rock, and they got the kids in there. My grandson's really short. He's got this big bass on, and he's standing there, and there's this young rock star kid, guitar teacher in his 20s. And my grandson keeps going, "My grandfather's famous." And the guy's going, "Yeah, right." Sure he is. And my daughter could hear the whole thing. And my grandson's going, "No, really, my grandfather, he's a famous band." And finally, the kid goes, "Okay, kid, so who's your grandfather?" And he goes, "Grandpa Gary."
That's hilarious. Did he say what band Grandpa was in?
He didn't know. He just knows Grandpa Gary. Because he had seen the gold records in my place, when and all that. And then my daughter said, said Alcatrazz, and the manager comes flying out of the office. Oh my God, he lives in this town. We don't know this. Oh, we'd love to meet him. Oh God. And all the other members, what's going on? What's going on? He goes, Alcatrazz, Alcatrazz. They go, oh my God. You tell people Alcatrazz, they go, I never heard of it. Say, go to any guitar center in the world and say Alcatrazz. See how that works for you then. They got Steve and Yngwie and murals, 25-foot murals in the front of the guitar centers around the country. So there's that. And a lot of times people say New England or Alcatrazz, and they've heard the name New England, they've heard the name Alcatrazz. They haven't heard of the band, they think they have. But that's the beauty of the two names. You can remember the name. There's so many bad band names out there, the this and the that, and intergalactic calculator, whatever I call themselves. You can't remember those kind of names. My grandson made me smile that day.
That's awesome, though. It's really awesome. I always find it interesting, when you look back at things that you've done and you're like, while you were doing them, they seemed so incredibly difficult. But then when you look at the rest of your timeline and you reflect back and you're like, but that had to happen, because if the difficult stuff didn't happen, then the other stuff wouldn't have been created. So do you feel that way with the transition between New England and Alcatrazz? Because if New England stayed the way it was, you may not have created the Alcatrazz.
Right. I've had my kids in Los Angeles, when I moved to LA. It's true. And like I said in the book, that sometimes not getting an audition or something going wrong is the best thing that can happen to you. And 3 or 4 months later, something greater comes along that really fits well. And then you really evolve with that. And that's the case of New England breaking up. It's like, God, now what? Everything was so smooth. We had it so oiled and it was running great. And then we go to Alcatrazz and it went up another notch, even after that point, which I didn't know if that was possible. I knew we had done it once and I felt proud of that. And we did it twice. So I guess I know what I'm talking about. Did it twice. But that's just luck. And it's true that sometimes you feed off the bad times. You can't enjoy the good times without knowing the bad times. If you just have good times all the time, you'd be bored and become suicidal. And you have to experience what it's like. People come to see you in a snowstorm or something. You have to appreciate that. You have to know what it's like driving a snowstorm.
Yeah. So I just wanted to go back before our time flies, but I wanted to go back to one thing that you said early on that really was a motivator for you to write the book. It was really about encouraging young musicians to follow their dream, but also not be delusioned by their dreams. Business decisions that are made or not made. So after writing the book and touching on certain things that did happen, you talk about your legal issue and kind of walking through that, which is difficult because a lot of times you don't really see how things are going to unfold until they're unfolded and you really can't change them. It's so funny. There's so many people kind of joke around about contracts are written on napkins or contracts are written on the back of a coaster. And, and then you go back and you look at something and you're like, geez, I probably should have done that a little differently. So especially now, the whole world feels a bit more legal. A lot of young people really can't afford things. So what would be your best advice? Or not everyone can get on American Idol or The Voice. A lot of those shows have been out for the last probably 20 years. And, it happens to be, very gifted people, but they're up against each other. And some of the people I know, I've even had one of them on my show. He wasn't the winner, but he's done quite well for himself, and it's like astounding that he did go as far as he did because he was like not a runner-up, he was in the mix, So what is the best advice for our audience?
Well, I think if you want to do that, just stick to your guns, keep your vision fine-tuned and go for it. Never give up, never say never, because things can happen. And again, I was in England. I met a bunch of English guys and played some English bands. I thought, great, we're rehearsing the big studio and Mr. Big is our manager. Robert Stigwood is paying my rent. And I'm 21 years old. How cool is that? And then I get the word from the Queen that leave England immediately because my immigration is not happening. And Herman, the German drummer, Herman Rebel, had the same thing. He went back to Germany and joined an unknown band called the Scorpions. And I went back to Massachusetts and joined an unknown band that became New England. So I'd never been in a group in New England, hadn't had that problem with immigration in England. And if New England hadn't broken up in Massachusetts, I would never lived in Los Angeles for the next 20 years of my life. So you have to dust yourself off and just, keep an open mind and keep going. Just get back in the ball again, put your head down and go.
That in itself is a lesson for the current day folks. Wow, it's amazing. Wow. So here we are. It's 2025. And what do you have coming up? What is the plan?
Keep playing. We have a new album called Prior Convictions, Alcatrazz record. We taken some old songs and put our new guys in there singing and playing guitar, and redid the songs, and just kind of a fun thing to put together and put out. And then there'll be a tour in Europe, starting in Sweden, Finland, Norway, going into Belgium and France between this coming Thanksgiving and Christmas time. In the meantime, we're working on a new record for 2026. Come out sometime early 2026, if all goes well.
That's great. And you're going to be playing with Girls School and with Banglo Choir, my good friend David Reese, huh?
Yeah. Good guy.
Yeah.
And the girls at Girls School are great people, too. Those girls rock. We played with them in Oregon in 1984 with Yngwie Malmsteen band. We did a show together in Portland, Oregon, a long time ago. So it's great.
But that's a testimony. I mean, look, you guys are still rocking it. I mean, even Girls School, and the fan base is still there. I know that for sure. So that's cool. Yeah. Very good. So how can everyone contact you? I know that No Bass, No Party is available as a book. It's also available on Audible, like how I listened to it. I would highly recommend that. You're on Alcatrazz is on Facebook and Instagram.
Yep. I am too myself. I'm a bunch of things on there. The book's also available on Kindle as well. On Amazon.
Great. Okay. All right. Cool.
And I've just been out there, having a great opportunity to talk to people like yourself with my book, which has been, I didn't think this would happen a year ago when I started writing. I thought,
I think you need a second book, though, because I'm still hungry for more. I know there's more stories in there. I know there are.
I got crazy, going to Woodstock, all that stuff. Had some great times. I went to, talking about bands, the summer of '69, I went to the Atlantic City Pop Festival, the Newport Jazz Festival in Woodstock, and I saw 90 bands in 3 weeks.
Wow. That's incredible.
It's for starters, plus all the other trips we went to see all these other bands back then, the Buffalo Springfield opening for the Beach Boys and whatever, this band and that band, and cool bands.
Wow.
I just lived, when I was younger, I used to live for all that stuff, for music, and just go see bands. And we'd go hundreds of miles to see a band play. I don't take notes what I like about this band or that band, try and make my band a certain version of all that things I liked.
Well, I think you're definitely going to have to work on a second book, and good luck with your tour. It's been a pleasure to have you on, Gary. I really, truly enjoy talking with you, and I'm an 80s fan, so I love Alcatrazz. So keep doing what you're doing. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
Tomorrow The chances are running out. I'm taking off right now. Now that I'm on my way, I don't feel so good, don't feel alright. But tomorrow when the crowd meets my flight, I'll forget about being alone tonight. Alone tonight. Alone tonight. Alone tonight.
You have been listening to Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium, Dream Central Station, LLC. My audio editor is Al Hemberger at the Loft Recording Studios in Bronxville, New York. This is WNEW 102.7 FM radio.